They tell you that time heals everything. They look you in the eye, these well-meaning strangers and distant relatives, and they offer you platitudes reptines of voices. They say that the sharp edges hablos will dull, that the empty chair at the dinner table will eventually just become a piece of furniture again. Rather than a gaping wound in the fabric of your reality. But they lie because they are afraid of the truth. They are terrified to admit that some moments don't just pass through you like a storm. They stagnate. They settle into the marrow of your bones and change the chemical composition of who you are. I used to believe that the death of a parent was the absolute worst thing a human heart could endure. When my mother, Elena, took her last breath, I thought I had reached the bottom of the ocean. I thought the pressure couldn't possibly get any heavier. The house, a sprawling Victorian thing that always seemed to catch the wind in its hips, fell into a silence so profound it felt like deafness. But it was wrong. Grief wasn't the bottom. Grief was just the doorway. What lay beneath it, what was waiting for me in the dark basement of my father's sorrow, was something far more terrifying than that. It was a twisted, suffocating form of life. My name is Elara. I haven't spoken this name in a room full of people in years. I've spent a long time hiding, folding myself into the corners of new cities, trying to outrun a ghost that isn't even dead. But secrets are heavy. They're if you keep them inside too long. They turn into a poison that eats away at your stomach lining and keeps you awake until the sun bleeds through the blinds. So, I am going to tell you the story. Not the polished version I gave the guidance counsel at university, and not the vague, defensive version I gave to the few boyfriends I let get close enough to ask about my family. This is the raw truth. And before I start, I need you to understand something. This isn't a story about abuse in the way the movies show it. There were no bruises on my arms. There was no shouting. There were no locked basements. It was quiet and ended. It was a violation that came with a smile, with a warm cup of tea, with a hand that lingered just a second too long on a shoulder. It was a betrayal that wore the macabre lab until it was too late to tell the defense. We were a family of 4 and kept by my mother. Elena was the sun we all orbited. She was vibrant, chaotic, and filled with a kind of frenetic energy that made the dust moths in the house dance. She painted watercolors in the kitchen, snuffed to all chess records, and had a way of looking at you that made you feel like the only person in the universe. My father, Arthur, was the moon cool, distant, reflecting her light but generating none of his own. He was a man of rigid routines and few words. He worked as an architect, spending his days with blueprints and structural layout, obsessed with how things held together. He loved her, and know that. He loved her with a desperate, silent intensity that bordered on worship. When she was alive, his obsession was quiet. He would watch her across the room with a look of fascination, as if he couldn't believe she was real. But when the Kense took her fast, brutal, and merciless, the tank snapped. The structure he had built his life on collapsed, and it was the only debris left standing that looked like the foundation. The funeral was a blue of grey skies and wet umbrellas. It felt like a cliché, as in from a movie everyone has seen 1,000 times. My brother, Tobias, stood next to me. He was 2 years younger, barely 17, but he looked like an old man that day. He had pulled the hood up his oversized coat up over his head, shadow in his eyes. Tobias had always been sensitive, a boy who felt the well too deeply, and losing mom shattered him. He retreated instantly. In the days that followed, he became a ghost in his own house. He stopped eating dinner with us. He plugged his ears with headphones, blasting angry, discordant electronic music that leaked out and filled the hallway with a teeny, aggressive rhythm. He locked his door. He built a fortress of silence because he knew, perhaps instinctively, that the in the house had changed, and then there was Arthur. My father. At the funeral, he didn't cry. He stood by the grave like a marble statue, his face a macabre stoic emptiness. People whispered about how strong he was, how dignified. Arthur is a rock, Mayan whispered to me, squeezing my hand with icy fingers. You lean on him, Elara. Ella get you through this. If only she knew. If only anyone knew that Darak wasn't salad. It was hollow, and it was hungry. The shift didn't happen overnight. It was a slow, creeping roach and up boundaries. It started with the S. In the weeks after the funeral, I took over the household chores. I was 20, taking a gap year before finishing my degree, and it felt natural to step into the void mom had left. I cooked the meals. I did the laundry. I dusted the mental ware and said, and while I moved through the house, trying to keep the rhythm of our lips from stalling completely, I began to feel it, the weight of his gaze. It wasn't the look of a grieving father checking on his daughter. It was a study. He would sit in his leather armchair in the corner of the living room, a book open on his left button read, and he would watch me. If he was folding towels, his eyes followed the movement of my hands. If he was reading by the window, I could feel his stare and the back of my neck prickling the fine hairs there. When I would tend to catch him, I wouldn't look away immediately. I would hold my gaze for a bit too long, his expression unreadable, before offering a small, sad smile. You moved just like her, said one evening. It was raining, a relentless autumn drizzle, that tapped against the glass like skeletal fingers. I was making tea, and just making el gré, that, I said, trying to keep my voice light, trying to ignore the tightness in my chest. No, Mehmet, standing up and walking into the kitchen. Serum suddenly felt small. It is the way you tilt your head, the way your hands flatten when you're deciding which Mac to use. It is uncanny, Elara. It is like she is still here, I reached out then. His hand was large, warm, and heavy. I placed it on my cheek. It was a gesture of affection, surely. A father comforting his child, but his thumb brushed against my lower lip. Just once, a slow, deliberate drag that sent a jolt of ice down my spine. I froze. I didn't pull away. Why didn't I pull away? But my breath caught in my throat. I stared at my mouth for a second before his eyes flicked up to mine. They were wet, glassy with tears, but behind the sadness was something else. A hunger, a plea. I miss her so much, I whispered, his voice cracking. I know that I managed to choke out, stepping back, breaking eye contact. I miss her too. I poured the tea with shaking hands and retreated to my room. I locked the door that night. It was the first time I had ever locked my bedroom door in my childhood home. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself that grief makes people do strange things, that he was just looking for a connection, that he was drowning and it was the only life left. I berated myself for making it ugly in my head. Ese your father, I thought. Ese getting. Don't be disgusting. But the God knows what the brain refuses to accept. The God knows when the predator enters the clearing, even if the predator is were in the face of the man who taught you to ride a bike. As the winter set in, the isolation deepened. The house was situated on the edge of town, bordered by a thick line of pines that blacked out most of the afternoon sun. The shadows grew longer, and so did the silence between me and Tobias. I tried to talk to him. I would knock on his door, bringing him a plate of food. Tobias? I'd call out softly. Can I come in? Sometimes he wouldn't answer. Sometimes he would just grunt. One rare afternoon, I opened the door. His room smelled of stale and unwashed clothes. His eyes were dark circles, hollowed out by sleeplessness. How are you holding up? He asked, stepping inside. He looked at me, really looked at me, and his expression twisted. It was a mix of pity and revulsion. You should get out of here, Elara, I said, his voice hoarse. What? He asked, confused. What do you mean? We can't just leave that. Ese not right, Tobias interrupted, cutting the air with his hand. Haven't you noticed? The way he talks to you? The way he is with you? It is sick, Elara. It is weird. Ese grieving, Tobias, I defended, the automatic script rising to my lips. Violar. Tobias left, a dry, bitter sound. That's not grief. I am grieving. I don't look at you like I want to consume you. Ese turning you into her, and you letting him. Slammed the door in my face. I stood there in the hallway, the vibrations of the slam trembling through the floorboards, and I felt a wave of nausea. Tobias oite. Eso what I was trying so hard to ignore. And instead of validating me, his words made me feel complicit. Was I letting him? Was he engaging it by staying? But where would I go? I had no money, no job, and the guilt of leaving my shattered father alone was a chain around my ankle. The escalation was subtle, tactical. It about force. It was about rewriting reality. Arthur began to buy me things. It started with a scarf. It was silk, painted with abstract flowers, beautiful and expensive. I saw this in the window, I said, handing me the bag so Bedine. It looked like something she would have worn. I thought it would look beautiful on you. I put it on to appease him. A smile, that same sad, possessive smile. Perfect, I whispered. Then it was perfume. Not just any perfume, her perfume. Shalimar? The heavy, vanilla-scented fragrance that had been the background scent of my childhood. Él estaba tal habitant my vanity while he was out. There was no note. Just the battle, sitting there like a demon. I didn't spray it. I hid it in the back of my drawer, buried on the old sacks. But the next day, I asked, did you get my gift? Yes, I said, staring at my toast. Thank you, Dad. Why aren't you wearing it? His voice dropped and acted. It is a classic scent. It suits a woman like you. A woman like you, not my daughter. A woman, I'm saving it for a special occasion. Iliadium met a sound of dissatisfaction, but he didn't push it. Not yet, the boundaries continued to dissolve. I stopped knocking. He would be in my room, studying or reading, and the door would creak open. He wouldn't announce himself. He would just walk in and start talking, as if we were in the middle of a conversation. He would sit on the edge of my bed. That was the worst part, the invasion of that personal space. The bed is a sanctuary. When a parent sits on a child's bed to read a story, it is safety. When a father sits on a granddaughter's bed close enough that his eye brushes against the bed covering her legs, it is a threat. He would talk about his marriage. It would tell me intimate details that adults should never know. It told me about their honeymoon, about how passionate Elena was, about how she liked to be held. It spoke of her body, her desires, her heat. And as he spoke, he looked at me. He looked at me as if he was checking for the blueprints. Seeing if the architecture of my body matched the meme images. I would sit there, frozen, nodding, trying to make myself small, trying to disappear into symmetras. I wanted to scream, stop, I am your child, I am not her. But the words died in my throat. I was paralyzed by a confusing cocktail of fear and pity. I was so broken. I was weeping as he spoke. How do you push away a weeping man? How do you accuse a grieving widow of being a monster without feeling like a monster yourself? One night, Sepal went out. A windstorm had battered the coast, snapping power lines like twigs. The house plunged into darkness. I was in the living room, trying to read by the light of a few candles I had scrunched from the kitchen drawers. The shadows danced on the walls, elongated and grotesque. Arthur came in carrying a bottle of wine and two glasses. The fire in the heart cast a flickering orange glow across his face, deepening the lines on his mouth and this. He looked handsome, in a ragged, weathered way, but he also looked dangerous. A drink to keep the cold out, I said, pouring the red liquid before he could refuse. He handed me the glass. His fingers brushed me knee, warm and dry. I sat down on the sofa next to me, not in his armchair. On the sofa, the distance between us was less than a foot. I could smell him old spice, rain, and the metallic tang of the wine. Do you remember when you were little? I asked softly, staring into the fire. You used to be terrified of storms. You ran into our room and jumped into the middle of the bed. You declared pride between us. I remember, he said, inching away slightly. We protected you, I said. We kept you safe. He turned to me then, shifting his body so he was facing me fully. I can still protect you, Elara. You don't have to be so distant. We are the only two people in the world who understand what we lost. We should be leaning on each other. I'm okay, Dad, he said, my voice trembling. I'm handling it, are you? I reached out and took a lock of my hair, dwelling it between his fingers. You look so tired. You look so lonely. I leaned in. The air in the room seemed to vanish. I pressed my back against the arm of the sofa. Trapped. You have haze, I whispered. God, you have haze. Sometimes, when the light hits you, I forget. I forget she's gonna move closer. His face was inches from mine. I could smell the wine on his breath. My heart was humming against my lips like a trapped bird. This was it. The line was about to be crossed. The unspoken thing was about to be spoken dead, he said, a warning, a plea. Don't call me dead, Mehmet. Just for a moment. Just be here with me. Don't be Lara. Just be. He closed his eyes and leaned forward, his lips seeking my forehead, but drifting lower towards my temple, towards my cheek. I shoved him. It wasn't a gentle push. It was a violent, panic shove. The wine glass in his hand tipped, splashing red liquid all over the beige carpet like a splatter of blood. He stumbled back, catching himself on the coffee table. No, he shouted, scrambling up from the sofa. No, what are you doing? The room went silent. The only sound was the wind howling outside and the crackle of the fire. Arthur looked at me, blinking, as if waking from a trance. I looked at the spilled wine. I looked at my terrified face. And then, his expression hardened. He was just comforting you, I said, his voice cold, devoid of the warmth from seconds ago. Why are you reacting like that? What is wrong with you? You were. I couldn't even say it. The accusation felt too heavy, too dirty. I was hugging my daughter, snapped, standing up and brushing off his pants. You have a sick mind, Elara. Just like your brother. You twist everything. Attendant walked out of the room, leaving me standing there in the candlelight, shaking. That was his weapon. Gaslighting. It made me doubt my own reality. It made me feel like the pivot for noticing his perversion. It made me feel guilty for having boundaries. I didn't sleep that night. I dragged my dress in front of my bedroom door. I sat on my bed, fully clothed, clutching my car keys. I knew I had to leave, but fear is a paw e falpelasas. I had no money. I had nowhere to go, and the small, treacherous part of me, the child part still wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe that I had misunderstood, that he was just a sad, lonely old man and I was a hysterical girl. But the next day, the escaped and that I came home from a walk to find him in my room. I wasn't just sitting there. I was going through my closet. I had pulled out dresses, shirts, skirts, and thrown them onto the floor in a pile. In his hands, I held a dress I hadn't seen in years. It was a vintage blue velvet dress that had belonged to my mother. She had worn it to gala dinners in the 90s. It was iconic to her death. He asked from the doorway, my blood running cold. He turned to look at me. His eyes were wild, feverish. Put this on, I said. It wasn't a request to what? Put it on. I want to see it. I need to see it, no, he said, stepping back. Detese mame ese dress. I am not wearing it. He took a step toward me, clutching the velvet fabric in his fists. I bought you the scarf. I bought you the perfume. I take care of you. I feed you. I keep this roof over your head. His voice rose to a shout, shaking the walls. Is it too much to ask for a little kindness? A little meme? I just want to see her, Elara. I just want to see her one more time. I am not her. I screamed back, then finally breaking. I am Elara. I am your daughter. Look at me. I am not your wife. I stopped. Sweat seemed to hit him physically. I looked at the dress in his hands, then at me. For a second, I thought he might hit me. His jaw wagged, grinding his teeth. Then, slowly, the rage drained out of his face, replaced by a look of utter, crushing disappointment. You're useless, I whispered. You look like her, but you're nothing like her. She was warm. She was loving you. You are cold. You are selfish. I threw the dress at my feet, and stormed past me, slamming his shoulder into mine as he went. I stood there, staring at the blue velvet heap and the floor. And I knew that if he stayed, he would die. Maybe not physically. He might not kill me with a knife or a gun. But he would hollow me out. I would chip away at my soul until there was nothing left but a mannequin for him to project his dead wife onto. I would consume my identity until it ceased to exist. I didn't wait for him to come back. I didn't wait to say goodbye to Tobias, which is the one regret that still wakes me up at las 3 a.m. I grabbed my duffel bag. I threw in clothes, my laptop, my passport, and the little cash I had stashed in a hollowed notebook. I didn't take the scarf. I didn't take the perfume. I left everything I had given me getting down the stairs, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The house felt alive, as if the walls were trying to contract and keep me there. The floorboards creaked, announcing my escape. I expected him to burst out of his study, to block the door, to grab me. But the hallway remained empty, burst out into the cool night air, stumbling toward my bed sudden. My hands were shaking so badly, I dropped the keys in the gravel. I scrambled for them, scraping my knuckles, terrified that the front door would open and his silhouette would appear, blotting out the light. But it didn't kick-start the car. Threw it into reverse and peeled out of the driveway, spraying stones behind me. I didn't look back. I drove until the town was a speck in the rearview mirror. I drove until the pine trees gave way to open fields. I drove until the light came on, and I was forced to stop at a lonely Seva station 300 miles away. I sat in that car, under the vast fluorescent lights of the gas station canopy, and I screamed. I screamed until my throat was raw. I screamed for the mother I lost. I screamed for the brother I left behind. And this créame.